Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I figured I would do a bit of a layering tutorial because I know a lot of you guys have been asking for that. So I'm gonna go over the track that I made for the last video. You can check that video out here. And I'm just gonna kind of like go through how my thought process is, I guess. Yeah, hopefully you can learn something from it. I just want to say, like, I am not the best at layering or mixing or stuff like that, but I think I have at least like an idea of what I'm doing. So if you don't learn anything from this video, please dislike it, unsubscribe, hit me in the face. Yeah. Vad ska jag då? This entire track was made entirely with my sample pack and my sound bank that I'm releasing this Friday. Let's get into it, guys. Oh, and I'm also giving a pair of these away. You can choose between a pair of these or a Scarlett Focusrite Solo sound card, and you're also gonna get my own sample pack and my sound bank that I'm releasing this Friday. So go to the last video that I uploaded and write down in the comments why you think you should win. And I'm gonna pick a winner this week, and the winner will be announced on Friday. So go ahead and do that now if you haven't already. Alright guys, so we're inside FL Studio now. Let's start at the break.
I hear the sounds of your heartbeat. I can hear it now. I can hear it now. I hear the sounds of your heartbeat. I can hear it now. I can hear it now.
So I'm gonna explain both my layering and my mixing kind of in this video. I always like to start with like one of these drones. And if we open up an EQ, you can see that it kind of covers this mid area. This isn't really gonna disturb any elements that you add to it. It just adds to like the overall vibe of the track. I have some impacts and an ambient shot. It covers mostly the mid and high frequencies. And for this little plucky synth thing I have going on is I cut off some low end to make room for the bass that comes in later. And other than that, we just have a piano. And I've cut away the low and the high end on that as well. So in terms of layering, like in this part of the track, it's super basic. You want to make sure to always, like, not necessarily in every part of your song, keep the whole frequency spectrum like loaded at all times. You want to have some dynamic frequency and volume stuff going on all the time. So that it's not all just a constant line all the time during the whole track. You want it to have ups and downs. And the reason why I want to talk about layering in this part of the track and not just like the drop part of the track, like layering the leads and stuff, is because layering is something that you do all the time. You need to think of layering as something you do with every single piece of sound that you add to your track, because they will all have an impact on the frequency spectrum. And that's pretty much what you're doing when you're layering. You're adding things to the frequency spectrum. So when we go to the next part in the break,
I hear the sounds of your heartbeat.
the vocal is taking up pretty much all the high end. I don't have a lot of high frequency sounds here at all. This sound is pretty cut off. The bass is definitely pretty cut off, but it still has some mid frequencies to keep it like alive. I even cut off the snaps a bit. Piano, there's not much high frequencies there. And I look at mixing as a type of layering, because you need to make sure all the levels of the different components like match up. So take the snap, for example. If I was to increase the gain a ton, it just sounds like trash. And also when it comes to layering your synths and basses and stuff like that, you need to make sure that the levels of the individual layers are reasonable for what you're trying to make, basically. I know I'm speaking in quite general terms, but it's something to keep in mind all the time. But yeah, most of the stuff that I add here in this part, like this ARP, for example, this clock, and this perk loop, they don't really take up that much space in the frequency spectrum, and they're not that loud. So like layering or mixing wise, they shouldn't really be a problem. So yeah, the build-up. I keep most of the components from the break in the build-up. I removed the synth and the piano actually. And the reason I do that is because I want to give more room to the lead that's coming in and some more room in the frequency spectrum for all of the snares and the risers and the other stuff that I add. I'm sure I could still keep this in here, but it might be that all of the different layers start to compete with each other. And yeah, that's a quick little like walkthrough of the break and like how I think. Now we get into the layering of the bass and the leads and all of the other cool stuff here in the drop. And I'm also going to walk you through my mixing process when working on the drop. So I almost always start my drops with a kick and a clap or a snare or something like that. In this case, I'm using my favorite kick from my sample pack, and that's routed to a compressor. I always do that, just a fruity compressor with a drum preset. Where is it? There. And then I just lower the gain a bit, and you can adjust that like as needed. And just a clap. I always start with that, and then it depends if I want to go for bass or leads. It's usually one of them, or I start messing around with like some one-shots or something. But for the sake of this video, let's start by going through the bass layers. So my bass consists of two patterns, pattern 8 and pattern 11. Pattern 8 is the bass mid-high frequencies, and this is the sub layer. So this is the more gritty layer. And as you can see, I've started to cut it away just as the bass ends. Maybe I could cut away even a bit more. And other than that, I haven't actually done any more EQing, just because I always make these projects pretty fast. But you could definitely go in here, add an EQ, and like listen. Listen for like frequencies that are standing out a bit too much and stuff like that. But yeah, the gritty layers consists of 3 layers. This was before I named my presets, so I'm not sure what presets these are, but they are all included in my sound bank. So you should definitely go get that. It's 100 presets for Silent. Anyway, the layers sound like this. And yeah, together they just work really well. Basically what you could do is just like open up my preset bank, choose a couple basses that you like, EQ them a bit, like individually, find the harsh frequencies and just drag them down a bit and remove all of the sub frequencies, and then you put them on a bus channel and you like compress it a little bit, maybe add some distortion, do whatever you like, maybe some bus EQing as well. It all really depends on the track and the sounds that you're using. In this instance, like I said, I did this like really quickly, so I just routed everything to one channel, added some distortion, some compression, a sound equalizer and some EQ, and that worked out like fine. I don't use that many layers in the drop, so the fewer layers you use, the less chance it is of everything becoming like muddy and like the different parts like interfering with each other. Like to really up your game, you need to like process everything meticulously and individually, and then together as well. And for the sub bass, I just use one of the sub bass presets. If you're listening through your phone, you can't hear this. And I just cut away all of the frequencies, except for the sub ones. So by doing this, you are really making it easier on your mix, basically. EQing is a huge part of layering and mixing. For the lead, it sounds like this. Yeah, so I have these reverb automations. I have 2 reverbs. One is quite heavy, and I automate that upwards, like here in the breaks. Here is the reverb that's on all the time, that I just cancel in this part, because I want it to be completely quiet. So the lead consists of 5 layers. So this is just a kind of a harsh, distorted, bendy pluck. And here's a more open, distorted saw lead sound. Here's a really like detuned, distorted saw and square lead. Here's a pretty simple saw lead. And here's another really detuned, distorted saw wave sound. And like I said before, I threw this project together pretty quickly, so I haven't processed any of these sounds individually, and it works out in this case. It doesn't necessarily mean it will always be the case. Sometimes, depending on what sounds you're using and the track you are making, you really need to process some of these sounds individually. Like if one of these sounds were really heavy in the entire frequency spectrum, like bass frequencies, mid frequencies, and high frequencies, and if you would add like distortion on top of that, it would be all over the mix and it would like mud everything out. But in this case, these presets are pretty like clear, I guess. They don't take up a lot of space. So in this case, it worked by just routing everything to one channel and process them from there. I've added some 3D wave shaper. It's a distortion plugin, some compression on top of that. Here I have one of my reverb layers, a filter that I use, and another reverb. And here is the EQ. So I've cut away all of the sub frequencies and everything beneath that, because there are certain frequencies down there that you can't really hear, but the only thing that they are doing is that they are mudding up the entire mix basically. So you really want to make sure to cut that away when it comes to leads, your chord layers and stuff like that. Even on your bass layers, generally you want to remove like the last very few frequencies over here that are beneath the sub frequencies, because those are just taking up your entire spectrum and they make everything really muddy. I've also picked out some harsh frequencies here and I've just put them down a bit. Other than that, there's nothing super complicated with the layering here. I just added a bunch of layers that sounded good together and did some processing on them basically. So with the bass and the lead and the drums that I've shown you so far, the drop sounds like this. Sounds okay, but there still needs to be some more layering done to the mix. So this is what I mean when I say layering is bigger than just how to layer leads and how to layer basses and stuff like that. Like you do layering all the time. Layering and mixing, it goes hand in hand, and this is what I want to try to convey with this video. I always add some kind of one-shots in my tracks. They add more impact, like when the drop hits, and it fills out the spectrum a bit more. So what I've done here is I've added these brass stabs-ish thingies, and I can see here that the only thing I've put on them is a sidechaining plugin, but what I should have done is I should have put on an EQ here, because as you can see, these frequencies down here are also playing, but we can barely hear them, and even though they might be such like super low volume, you click here, you go into presets, you click this one, and you just want to do this. Virtually you can't hear like any difference at all, but it's gonna clear up the mix a lot. And the last two things that I added was a synth chord thing and a piano as well, and the chords sound like this. And as you can see on the EQ, I've removed all of the sub frequencies and a lot of the bass frequencies as well. The reason I did that again is because those frequencies would interfere with the other bass frequencies that I have. And if I wouldn't have done that, it would sound like this. So again, EQing is a huge part of the layering process. And lastly, I added this piano. I added some OTT, same thing here, I just removed all the sub frequencies and most of the bass frequencies. And yeah, the rest of the track is just like sound design and stuff, like this part for example. Yeah, so those are my kind of thoughts on layering, like how I layer, and a bit on how I do my mixing as well, and kind of how layering and mixing goes hand in hand. People think of layering as something you do like, oh, what kind of layers do you have on your lead and stuff like that, but all of these components are layers. They are layers in the bigger picture, and the bigger picture being your entire track. Generally, more layers will result in a bigger sounding, more fuller sounding sound. But the more layers you add, the more processing you need to do, the more EQing you need to do in order to not make all of these, let's say, hundreds of elements are clashing with each other, because eventually the more you add, they are going to interfere with each other. So you need to process that away somehow. And that's what EQing, compression, and all of these things are for. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments. Don't forget to check out my sample pack and sound bank that I'm releasing this Friday. And don't forget to enter the giveaway. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on Friday. Bye bye.